Elon Musk has said that Twitter banning Donald Trump was, quote, morally wrong and flat out stupid, and that he would end the banning of Donald Trump in the event that he ends up taking possession of Twitter. Elon Musk is right here, okay? So let's start. There's so many different angles to deconstruct. I have argued this for years, that it made no sense to ban Donald Trump from Twitter. It was wrong, okay? And it set an awful precedent, and it hasn't been applied evenly. When you have the Ayatollah of Iran able to tweet, when you have the Taliban able to tweet, you have to allow the, at that point, democratically elected president of the United States, Donald Trump, to be able to tweet as well. It was a bad decision, an awful precedent that was set by banning Donald Trump. So if Elon Musk buys Twitter, I think it's the right decision. And he pointed out, by the way, that Jack Dorsey agreed with him as well. It was the right decision to extend the olive branch to Donald Trump and potentially allow him to return to Twitter. Now, I don't even know that it's actually good for Trump to come back to Twitter from a political perspective. And I do think that there's actually been backlash from the suspension that has worked in favor of Donald Trump. In other words, I think Twitter does not necessarily benefit Donald Trump. And there are a couple of different angles to consider here. If Trump is going to run in 2024, does he benefit from being on Twitter? Well, I asked that specific question of you guys, and around 15,000 of you have voted in the first hour already, and 55% of you said returning to Twitter would be good for Trump's presidential campaign. 45% of you said you thought it would be bad. I think it depends on how he uses Twitter, but I don't necessarily think it's good. And let me explain what I mean by that. 2024, in theory, is and should be a referendum on the incumbent president who is in office. That is Joe Biden. Every election with a sitting incumbent is a referendum on that incumbent. You judge whether or not they have done a good job and whether or not you think the person who might replace them would do a better job. If Donald Trump is on Twitter and begins to tweet like he did before, I think the possibility exists that 2024 is a referendum on Donald Trump more than it is a referendum on Joe Biden. And I'm not sure that Trump ends up benefiting with so-called swing voters by being on Twitter. Now, if he used Twitter differently, that could be a totally different story, but I don't think he would. And so I think this would play into Democrat hands. Flip side, I think Democrats, you've actually lost by banning Donald Trump. Because when Donald Trump is not on Twitter, the things that antagonized middle-of-the-road voters, suburban women, don't continue to antagonize them. And the referendum on the presidency becomes an up or down vote on Joe Biden. Without Trump able to be involved in the political discourse on Twitter, I actually think he becomes a martyr for the right and ends up benefiting because everybody already has, by and large, an opinion on Donald Trump. And I'm not sure that the storyline is beneficial to him in 2024 to be on Twitter. I'm also not sure, because of Truth Social, whether he's contractually able to even be on Twitter or not. My surmisal, my guess, and I haven't seen the contract, so I'm not saying this for sure, would be that a part of gaining the equity and the stake that he did in Truth Social was an understanding that he wouldn't go back to Twitter. And in fact, Trump has said that he would not return to Twitter, which means if that is true, that Elon Musk saying that Trump should be allowed back on Twitter is actually beneficial to Elon potentially, because it allows him to set the precedent of not permanently banning people while simultaneously not having to actually deal with the fallout of Trump returning to Twitter. So in 2024, whether Biden runs or not, given the fact that Democrats control the Senate, the House, and the presidency right now, everything that's gone wrong. Inflation at 8.5%, the border as a sieve, the overall murder rate skyrocketing, crime in general increasing exponentially in the country, COVID not going away, which was the promise of Joe Biden that he made when he ran on his campaign, the disasters overseas in both Afghanistan and in Ukraine. All of this is a direct responsibility of Joe Biden now. If Trump runs, does he turn the story from Biden's failures to a referendum on Donald Trump one way or the other? That, to me, is the big question. But in terms of what is being said from Elon Musk, I think he's standing on principle and precedent here when he says Twitter banning Donald Trump was morally wrong and flat out stupid. Elon Musk is 100% right on that front.